right, hello everyone. This is Seraphina Capranos, and today we're making sauerkraut. So the kind of sauerkraut that we're making is the kind that does not include vinegar. We're making a natural brine. We're actually making cultured vegetables, also known as fermented vegetables. And think of it as we're kind of making fertilizer for our own bodies and our own digestive systems. And that is that the bacteria that we contain primarily in our gut, although we also contain good bacteria on our surface of our skin, we have between 3 and 5 pounds of our body weight is actually bacteria. And this bacteria that exists in and on our bodies is part of our immune system and plays a very important role in our health and how we interact with our environment. So by making cultured vegetables, we're making natural, we're kind of harvesting this ecology or community of bacteria to feed that microbiome. So the first step is we want good organic vegetables. And I really like to have vegetables that are local and organically grown. They don't necessarily need to be certified organic, but just talk to your farmers markets or your local community farmers or gardeners and get yourself some good organic vegetables. And what we're going to do is you might want to wash or rinse or scrub any dirt off of your vegetables, and then we chop them. Now you might see here that sauerkraut, we often think of cabbage, but I like to make all kinds of different sauerkrauts. I like to make sauerkrauts that include carrots or onions or garlic like shown here. You can also make sauerkraut with seaweeds, with red cabbage, with all kinds of different kind of cabbages, ginger, hot chili peppers. But today we're going to make a pretty basic sauerkraut, which is primarily cabbage, and then I'm going to throw in some carrots, onions, and garlic as well. So I also have a nice local salt. I like to use as many local products as possible. The general ratio between the cabbage or the vegetables that you're fermenting as salt is somewhere in the vicinity of 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt to every pound of vegetable. So cabbage, an old naturopathic remedy for a lot of irritable bowel symptoms or colitis, was actually drinking cabbage juice. So cabbage is a member of the cruciferous family, or the brassicas, and it's a healing food. So everything we're eating or using here it has healing properties, and not to mention all the nutrients that exist in these vegetables. I like to chop everything fairly uniform, although sometimes it's nice to have things in different thickness, and it just gives an extra crunch and texture in the finished sauerkraut. Or you can also grate your carrots. I know a lot of people who like grated carrots. Personally, I like a little bit more of a crunch. All right, so now that I have everything nicely chopped to a size that I like, and again, you can be flexible with the consistency or how fine or chunky your cabbage and your vegetables are. And next we add the salt. So we had about 3 pounds of vegetable. So I'm going to start with maybe 3 teaspoons of salt. And again, I've done this so much, I just do this by eye. And then with clean hands, you just get right in there and you massage. And what you're going for is water follows salt. So all the natural juice, the natural liquid that is in these living vegetables is going to be massaged out. We're breaking down the cellular walls. And so it takes, anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how much you've got and how much arm strength you've got. And then what you're going to start seeing is a lot of juice, water. Now, there are all kinds of cool tools out there, and I'm going to show you a few right now. First of all, you might notice that I don't have a crock, and traditionally when we think about sauerkraut, we think about crocks. And I do have a crock here. I find a lot of my crocks from health food or secondhand stores, or I inherit them. This is a nice stone crock. You do not need to have a crock to make sauerkraut. There's also nifty things like airlocks and really fancy crocks that have all kinds of interesting design to facilitate the fermentation process. But what I really want to show you and what I'm passionate about is just showing people that you can make all kinds of amazing natural remedies and traditional foods with very low technology, no fancy expensive tools. So yes, there are crocks. If you see them at thrift stores, buy them, they're awesome. And then the other thing I found for $5 about 15 years ago is this mallet. This is a really cool mallet. It's a very heavy mallet. And this is actually used in making sauerkraut with a nice strong stone container. I'm not going to use this in my glassware, but in a nice stone container, this really helps pound the vegetable to basically allow the salt to get in there and draw out all the fluid, right? And that's what we do. And I'm not going to use a lot of weight because I'm going to break this glass bowl, but just to show you to keep your eyes out at thrift stores for these really cool tools. So after a while, what you're going to see is lots of juice, okay? And that's what you want. You want to see that juice. And the next step is, this is the time in your that you would put it in your crock if you hadn't already. But this method I'm showing you is just with a plain old canning jar that are really inexpensive. They run about $1, $1.50, depending on where you live. And I'm going to bottle it up with a clean, dry canning jar. And you push it down as hard as you can, because what we're creating is an anaerobic environment. We're wanting to create an environment that does not have any exposure to air. So it's really important to get those air bubbles out of there and push your vegetable down. You'll notice that the liquid is rising, and that's what you want. That's what you want to see. And I've got some nice natural juice here that I'm going to pour right on top. And I've got a little extra left, so I'm going to make a small bottle as well. But I really want to show you how the natural juice rises and covers the vegetable, right? So it's an anaerobic environment. All the vegetable needs to be below the liquid line. And all this juice, I have not added any water. You're not adding any water. I know that there are some folks out there who do that, and that's fine, but I prefer to not add any water. I want to massage it as much as I can so the natural juice covers the vegetable. So now the next step is, there's different philosophies here. Some people like to put a weight, and so I'm just using this little glass that fits inside and will function as a weight. And the weight is to keep all the vegetables below the liquid line, okay? And then what you can do is simply cover with a nice clean cloth, and you're covering just to make sure no bugs or dust falls in there. And you leave it somewhere where you can check on it regularly, preferably in a cool area away from direct sunlight or direct heat. So if you have a little area on your counter, that's just great to keep it there. Now, I've experimented a lot over the years, and I have found that I now just put a simple canning jar lid. I don't fasten it tightly. I might keep it quite loose, because with natural fermentation, there's burping, there's gas bubbles are going to form, and they'll need to be released. So what I like to do now is I just keep the lid on, I don't fasten the ring, and I just leave it, and then I check on it every single day. And what you're going to see is lots of bubbling and frothing will form, and that's just fine. Don't be alarmed. You just keep an eye. Some people like to scrape away the foam or the froth that forms. It's a personal opinion. You can certainly do that. And then personally, what I do is after maybe 5 to 7 days and it's fermenting and it's beginning to sour, I will put it in the refrigerator. And I'll leave it in the refrigerator and I keep tasting it and testing it maybe every few days again. And at about 3 weeks, that's when I find the sourness is just perfect for me. And the longer it stays in your refrigerator, the more it will sour over time. I've had sauerkrauts stay just perfectly crunchy and with an amazing flavor for about a year. After about a year, that's when they begin to soften and become mushy. They're not bad, but they will become softer. If you make your cultured vegetables in the summer, which is a wonderful thing to do as everything is coming into harvest, the fermentation process will certainly be faster. So in that case, after about 3 days on the counter, I'll notice it's really activated. And I know it's activated because the frothing and the bubbling is beginning to happen, and it may even swell, which is why it's really nice to leave half an inch to an inch of room between the liquid line and the vegetable line and the top. There will be a frothing and a swelling. And so long as your vegetables are below the liquid line, it should not mold. However, if you see some mold forming, that means you definitely need a wait, and you need to put it in a cooler environment, right? What I'm going to do is actually take a cloth and clean the rims, so to make sure that there's no vegetables remaining outside of the liquid line. So you really want to be careful and clean that up. And you should not have any problem with mold. Again, if you do, what you can do is remove some of the upper layer of the vegetables if it looks like they're spoiling, but I've only ever seen that happen when the liquid somehow evaporates or it wasn't massaged well enough to begin with, so you didn't produce quite a lot of juice. I have never done this, but you also can add water if you're concerned, if you've done all your massaging and there hasn't been enough liquid or juice that's formed, you can add a little water. My other favorite little trick to do that I sometimes do is I reserve some of the sauerkraut juice. So once I've eaten, let's say this is sat, it comes to a really nice sour. I've eaten this all up in maybe a month or so, and there's still some of this juice remaining. I'll take that juice and reserve it, and I'll add it to my next batch of sauerkraut. So that's another trick that you can use if you keep up on your rhythm of making sauerkraut as you need it, and you're taking some of the reserve. So I like to encourage people to eat at least a few tablespoons of natural sauerkraut once a day at the very least. If possible, to eat it with breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that would be just great. And there's a direct connection between our gut, our microbiome, the bacteria that live in our gut, and our mental and emotional health. There's lots of research now. We're lucky that there's this revolution in healthcare happening right now that is drawing more and more of a connection between our immune system, our mental, emotional health and well-being, and our gut health. We literally are what we eat, quite literally. And there's enough science that has shown that our microbiome, our colony, our ecology of good bacteria that live in our body, they can change within a day. And so I like to think of this as feeding our inner garden. Our body is more like a garden, I think of it that way anyway, than a machine. And just like you would create a nice, diverse environment in your garden, we're doing the same by introducing good bacteria to our bodies and our health. And that's how you make sauerkraut. So I hope you enjoy, and remember to support your local farmers.